Howdy neighbor, how is your garden growing? Me and my garden, I'm excited to talk to you about the food and flowers you could be growing in your garden for the month of May right here in the Sunshine State. And as always, I'm going to be using my handy dandy Wild Floridian garden planner. It is full of tips and ideas for you to use in your garden, whether you live in North, Central, or South Florida. Let's talk vegetables. In the month of May, if you live in North, Central, or South Florida, it is all about hot weather crops here in Florida. This is going to be everything from yard-long beans, cranberry hibiscus, roselle, okra, and sweet potatoes. And just to be clear with this hot weather list, we are now starting to get in the time of year where it's getting really hot, especially in Central and South Florida, where some of our hot weather crops aren't hot enough to start by seed. Not sure if that's the right way to say it, but here's the long and short of it. Some of our crops that were kind of more of the warm to hot weather crops, if we were starting by seed, by the time that they grow, they may start to become heat stressed at this time of year. But we can still jump into things like Seminole pumpkins, Everglades tomatoes, and hot peppers by just jumping ahead to transplants. But if we're focusing on things like starting seeds, we really want to focus on those plants that come from the real tropics. And those are going to be, of course, our hibiscus plants and some of our tropical vining plants. Hibiscus plants, I didn't think we were talking about flowers yet. I'm talking about the main three, which is cranberry hibiscus, roselle, and okra, which are all hibiscus plants, even though they're edible. And then on the vining plant side, we're definitely thinking about those sweet potatoes and yard-long beans. These are the things that come from tropical environments that love the heat, they love the humidity, and they just thrive in the monsoon weather that is soon to come. Now, before we dig into one of the hot weather vegetables that I definitely think you should get started this month, you may be thinking to yourself, where am I putting these plants? Because if you're at all familiar with any of the plants that I'm recommending, they all get really big and they take up a lot of space in your vegetable garden bed. But let me just show you what I'm doing right behind me so that you can see how all this kind of works together, because this is one of the places that it is just really different than what people do up north, and you might not have seen an example. So come on. I wanted to take you to show an actual example because I know many of you, this is one of the things that's really different from things that you might have seen up north or from people you watch that are from up north, because they don't tend to go into these hot weather crops. So the transition may be a little bit different. So what you can see here is I've already taken out two sets of different cold weather crops, my brassicas and my lettuces. Now all brassicas, because like we've talked before, these kales will go way longer into the season. They don't need to be removed. But things like my broccolis up front with my cabbages, they are out, they are done, they're either harvested or they bolted and they've been used as a chop and drop. And lettuces, well, you might not be able to see them right now because they've been basically being a chop and drop right into bed, which is open space for some of these larger hot weather crops. And in this bed, it might be hard to tell, but there are actually roselles in it already. Yes, hiding amongst all of these beets, which should be coming out in the next month, is our roselle, which you may be thinking, only one roselle? Yes, only one roselle, because roselles get big. Cranberry hibiscuses get big. Sweet potatoes take up a lot of space. So we don't need a lot, even for a bed that's 3.5 feet long. So just one roselle plant. The biggest trick for this right now is that I don't crush it or accidentally yank it out as I go and remove all these beets, which I can already tell you, I already Hulk smashed one of my roselles when I was chop and dropping my lettuce. But by putting this in and getting it seeded, started, and into place in the month of May, you can still have a crop before we're going to swing back around to cold weather crops again. And this is why it's really helpful to have dedicated spaces for cold weather crops or dedicated spaces for some of your crops. It's because hot weather crops many times pair really well with cold weather crops, because the hot weather crop takes up space late spring through summer into early fall, and then as it comes out, you go back into your cold weather crops. So hopefully this helps you kind of think through how it works. One of the nice things about roselle when it comes to just using up bed space is it's not a high maintenance plant. It's something that you're going to kind of stick in there and then come back 4 months later to harvest. Similar things with like okra and cranberry hibiscus. They're not things that you're fussing at a lot. And so when it gets really hot in the next couple months and humid, they can be really good for your beds to just block weeds out, shade things, plus potentially give you a harvest. Now, a few of you are probably thinking, I know you, Jacqueline, you have been starting and telling us to start hot weather crops for a month. Is it a little bit too late for this? And the answer is no. These are plants that I literally just started 2 weeks ago. While you can start these things months and months ago, they actually start a lot faster at this time of year because they like the heat. They are not fans of the cold. So these were started 2 weeks ago. These were started 2 months ago, and they're about the same size. So it can actually be a lot more advantageous to get these things started now versus months ago. And for me, if you guys have been watching my spring planting video, you know I got my cranberry hibiscuses, I've got roselles going, I got my Puerto Rican black beans, and of course, my little okras, they're getting going too. So as we head into this warmer season, consider some of these more low maintenance plants. But if you're looking for something that's like a little bit more maintenance and probably a lot more familiar, you may want to get started a sweet potato. Now, if you've been around the channel for years, you know I'm a huge fan of doing sweet potatoes here in Florida because they are the tubers that are tropical and actually prefer Florida rather than all those really cold climates where people are always trying to get these going. Oh, that was wet. Sweet potatoes are so easy to grow here in Florida. So easy. Once you get the formula right, they literally will take off in your garden. And if you live in the zone 10s and zone 11s, these things can grow pretty much all year round. And at worst, might die back if we have a cold snap. They can work in ground, they can work in a bed, and you can even grow them in containers. See my little sweet potatoes? It's just starting right there. It's probably hard to see, the leaves are purple right now. Sweet potatoes are actually indigenous to the tropical Americas. That's right, they come from over here. And they come from the places that are over here that are hot and humid and have intense sunlight. So they grow really, really well. I have grown sweet potatoes in my front garden, in beds, and now I am doing them in pots. And 2 out of 3 of these have worked really, really well for me. And I'll get back to you on this third one very shortly, but I have high confidence it's gonna work too. And this one's really easy because you can just go to the store, like you can go to Publix, you can find an organic sweet potato just like this and go ahead and get it started in your garden right now. This can be a fun experiment to do with the kids, the grandkids, and it's a win-win plant because the leaves are edible. Yes, they are a source of vitamin K. Now, here's the thing. Am I saying you should make a salad out of sweet potato leaves? No, 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 no. These leaves are more fibrous and thick, and they would do better in things like a stew or a smoothie, something that's gonna like break it down because they are very chewy. But if you go ahead and get your sweet potatoes now, whether you just run to the store or you can order from places like Southern Exposure, and I'm sure there's other places which y'all will let us know down in the comments below, you could end up having a harvest come Halloween, Thanksgiving, or even Christmas. Who doesn't love that? But you need to get them started now in order to be able to get to that harvest time. Now, a word of warning. I feel like the Northerners are probably not gonna tell you this, is that, remember I said these are like a tropical plant that's from the Americas? And you probably noticed I didn't mention it, and it's the low maintenance hot weather crops, because one of the things that sweet potatoes tend to do when we get into the summertime is they are gonna vine all over the place. And if you don't keep yanking those vines and chucking them back in the bed or pruning them off, they will start rooting like all over. And this is how it became a weed in my garden, is everywhere there's a node, they will go ahead and they will start setting roots. And now all of a sudden, I see a weed and nope, it's a sweet potato popping out of the ground. And I have been pulling them now for 2 years out of my front flower beds, which is good in a way, but also kind of annoying in a way. So just keep in mind that while they are very, very low maintenance, they do still have some maintenance versus things like a roselle. Let's talk cold weather crops and the month of May. So what you're gonna find mostly in the month of May is your brassicas, if they haven't headed out, are gonna probably head out at this time of year, definitely for Central and South Florida. North Florida, you might be able to make it all the way until June, but you're pretty much gonna be done very soon. So make sure that you're checking your rooting crops like your radishes, your beets, and your onions all throughout this month because they're gonna be ready soon. And depending on the varieties, they may, just like our brassicas, go ahead and bolt on you. So you wanna definitely catch them and harvest them and bring them in beforehand. You wanna see? That's a nice size. All right, Mr. Beet. She probably thinks it's like her tennis ball. It's about the same size. And something to consider as you're starting to harvest these crops is, especially with like things like radishes and your brassicas, is if you're not harvesting the actual leaf parts or you're gonna harvest just some of them, is making sure you use some of that as a chop and drop back down onto your beds so that you can, one, re-enrich your soil for when you come back in the fall time period, or if you're gonna put in other crops, and also to help just block out weeds, because we're in that season where weeds are starting to take off. Not quite this month, but definitely they're gonna start to next month. And so by just continuing to do some chop and drop leaves, you'll help suppress that stuff out, plus re-enrich your soil, which is just kind of like a win-win bonus thing. Now let's talk warm weather crops in the month of May and what you should be thinking about and looking out for. If you got these started in the timing that I recommended, you should be at the point of starting to harvest. Hooray! And congratulations. Your peppers, your eggplants, your tomatoes, they should be getting going by now. and you need to be going outside pretty regularly now to go and start pulling your harvest in. The second thing you should be considering is if you need to do any pruning to get some of these leaves up and off the ground just a little bit, just to help manage pest activity getting into your plants. The third thing when it comes to pest activity, it's the time of year that if you don't get to your harvest, the wildlife will. Whether it's tomato hornworms or other critters getting to your tomatoes, or millipedes going ahead and chomping on the bottom of your peppers, it's that time of year. They're out there, they're hungry, and they would like to eat some of your food. And a tip from me to you as someone who loves my wildlife, one of the things that I notice a lot of people struggle with at this time of year is wildlife starting to go ahead and take chomps out of their plants, specifically bugs. And a lot of you guys will ask me, how do I manage that? And long and short answer is I don't do a lot to manage it. But honestly, it's more about how I set up the garden in whole that allows me to not have to do any intervention with plants in general. And one of the things that I do that may be helpful for you, and it has to do with my major tip of the month, is to start a butterfly garden at this time of year. Number one, by specifically attracting monarch butterflies to your garden, it can help keep away things like long-tailed skippers that are going to eat your beans, cabbage moths, aka southern white butterflies, checker butterflies from your brassicas, and even some of your moths. And the reason is because monarchs are super territorial. You may just see them as flitting and floating and swooping around, but they are oftentimes patrolling their territory. I watch it all the time. They will do loops and loops around my vegetable gardens, both up front and out back, and then go ahead and drive away other butterflies. And even small birds at times too. They do not want other critters around their stuff. So by putting in milkweeds like swamp milkweed, aquatic milkweed, and butterfly weed, you can attract these beneficial insects to your garden, and they will tend to drive off other things. The second reason is that if you get milkweed, the number one problem people have in butterfly gardening is it has aphids. But these aphids are different than the type of aphids that typically attack your brassicas. These are ones that usually go on oleander plants, and so what it can do is bring in a ton of ladybugs, wasps, and just predatory bugs in general who will attack the caterpillars and other little critter and other little buggies in your garden. And number three is butterfly gardens at the end of the day are still pollinator gardens, and pollinators are going to help increase your harvest at this time of year. So consider adding a butterfly garden near your vegetable garden so that you can get the triple benefits of having them nearby. And I guess I can show you one of my other secrets for how I help keep pests away from my garden, and it has to do with my compost bin. What? How do compost bins keep bugs away from your vegetables? Well, actually, the reason it is I don't do hot composting. What I do is black soldier fly composting, which you may see a bunch of them flying around. And what black soldier fly composting is basically you're attracting black soldier flies so that they lay their eggs in your compost, and then their maggots, yes, maggots, rapidly eat down your compost. Why this is beneficial? Well, one, it opens up what you can compost. So now you can get into things like oils, fats, pastry items, meats, all that stuff. Basically, if you eat it, they eat it, which may have you questioning, what does that have to do with keeping pests away if you're bringing these black soldier flies in? Cool thing is a bunch of those maggots stay in, but some of them come out. And you know who knows that the maggots come out? The birds. The birds know that this is a major supply of food for them. And at this time of year, when they're laying eggs and have baby birds, soft body insects like caterpillars and maggots are really important for those little nestling, fledgling baby birds to go from just hatching to making their way from their nest, because 100% of their diet is gonna be these soft body bugs, which means mama and daddy bird love to hang out right here. They get their maggots, but they also go and pick up caterpillars and other small insects from my vegetable garden nearby. Let's switch gears into herbs. You may be wondering, which herbs can you do this month? And when it comes to kind of your full sun garden, we're out of the cool weather herbs, we're out of the warm weather herbs. Now we're kind of going beyond your typicals. This is gonna be seasoning peppers like your ají dulces, or your really, really super hot peppers like bird peppers, which are native to Florida, or things like your gingers, your turmerics. Those are the kind of herbs and spices that we would grow at this time of year. You got to go tropical at the end of the day. Now, what about the fruits? The fruit, add the fruit to your garden at this time of year. This is the beginning of all the tropical fruiting plants. If you want it, go get it. Mulberries, bananas. Yes, you're welcome. You'll see a lot of butterflies behind me up here. When it comes to Florida friendly flowers, we have a ton of hot weather options that you could be adding right now. Everything from angelonia to zinnias, sun patience, rudbeckias, and pentas. In the month of May, for our Florida native flowers, I would be considering adding things like swamp milkweed, aquatic milkweed, butterfly weed. I would also be thinking about adding things like our tropical sages. And of course, you should consider adding things like Stokes aster. Stokes aster is a native flower to the Panhandle, which is great at attracting butterflies, bees, and it's just pretty. It's big, it's purple, and it produces a lot of flowers. And in addition, it comes back year over year if you have the right conditions in your yard. It's a low maintenance plant. It is not aggressive. It will not take over your yard, but you will wish it had because these flowers are so pretty. It is one of those plants that you could be using as one of those to add to your own little home bouquets, and it definitely packs a punch in the garden. So if you're looking for a native flower to add to a container, into your landscaping or your flower bed, definitely consider adding Stokes aster. And if you're looking for even more inspiration on flowers, every single month I'm showing you even more options of both Florida friendly and Florida native flowers you could be adding into your garden, whether it's going to be in a pot or out in the landscape. When it comes to our flowers at this time of year, some of those cool weather flowers are starting to head out. Things like your petunias might start to fade, snapdragons and begonias. So just be prepared to have a game plan to prune them back or remove them and flip them to something else. And just to show you guys, I'm like really pleasantly surprised right here. These are my chrysanthemums that I added back in November, and they are bouncing back. And I know a bunch of you are probably wondering what this is behind me. This is a desert rose. And if you're looking for even more ideas, especially perennial flowers to add to your garden, you should check out last year's May garden guide. I go over more perennial flowers in those videos, in addition to more fruit ideas, vegetable ideas, and tips. And of course, if you want to pick up the Wild Floridian Garden Planner for more tips and ideas, go ahead and pick it up right here. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.